My ex-boyfriend was presenting my designs as his own in an international architecture competition with a $500,000 prize. He used 3 years of my work as his personal portfolio, and he didn't know I had every original sketch, every file with metadata, and every email proving who had designed every single line. There are things that don't hurt immediately. First, they leave you cold. First, your brain does something strange, which is processing the information technically before processing it emotionally, as if it needs to fully understand what happened before allowing itself to feel it. That is what happened to me when I saw Emilio's name on the finalist list of the most important international architecture competition in Latin America. It was not immediate pain. It was recognition. I recognized the lines of the building in the thumbnail image that appeared next to his name. I recognized the curvature of the main facade. I recognized the natural lighting system I had solved in a sketch notebook on a Tuesday night 3 years ago, sitting on the floor of our shared apartment with a cold cup of coffee beside me, and the satisfaction of having found the solution to a problem that had been resisting me for weeks. I recognized my own work, presented under someone else's name, with the possibility of winning $500,000. My name is Valentina. I am 35 years old. I am an architect specializing in sustainable design, and I have been practicing for 10 years on projects ranging from social housing to large-scale corporate buildings. It is a career I love with the intensity one loves things chosen with full awareness, knowing they were going to be difficult and doing it anyway. Emilio and I were together for 4 years. 4 years of romantic relationship that were also 4 years of professional collaboration. Because we are both architects, and because at some point in that relationship the line between the personal and the professional became so blurred that we no longer knew well where one ended and the other began. That, which at the time felt like a sign that we were well integrated as a couple and as a team, turned out to be the vulnerability he used. We ended things a year and a half ago. Not dramatically. With the quiet exhaustion of two people who have been together too long with too much intensity and who at some point realized that what they built no longer has the same meaning it once did. What I did not know when we separated was what he was doing with what we had built together. The competition was called the Latin American Sustainable Architecture Award. It was that year's edition of a prize awarded biennially with a first-rate international jury and the kind of industry weight that could define careers. The main prize was $500,000. I saw the finalists list by accident. A colleague sent me the link with a message that said something like, "Look who made it to the final," thinking I already knew, thinking that if Emilio had made it to the final with a project we had both worked on, I would be aware of it. I was not aware of it. I opened the link. I saw the image. I saw Emilio's name. I saw the name of the project, Metropolitan Bioclimatic Center, a project we had developed over nearly 2 years as a speculative design exercise, a project we had never presented to any client because it was complex, ambitious, the kind of project that serves to explore ideas and develop methodology rather than be executed immediately. A project I had designed for the most part. A project that now had Emilio's name as sole author on the technical sheet of an international competition. I spent the first 20 minutes staring at the screen with the kind of stillness that is not calm, but its exact opposite. Then I went to my studio. I have a filing system that some people consider excessive and that I consider simply correct. Every project has a physical folder and a digital folder. The physical folder contains the original sketch notebooks, printed floor plans and sections with handwritten annotations, meeting records, descriptive reports in their successive versions. The digital folder contains the three-dimensional modeling files, the renders, the drawing files and their versions with preserved change history, and the relevant email exchanges exported in a format with verifiable date and timestamps. Everything with dates. Everything with traceable authorship. Everything organized from the first day of each project as a work habit I developed in my early years of professional practice and never abandoned. I took out the Metropolitan Bioclimatic Center folder. It was thick. 2 years of work have physical weight. I opened it and started reviewing from the beginning. What I found reviewing the folder with the eyes of someone looking for evidence rather than memories was clearer than I had expected. The project had started as my idea. I had the original email in which I had described it to Emilio with date and time, describing the central concept that later became the axis of the design. I had his response, enthusiastic, proposing to collaborate. The sketch notebooks were mine. I recognized my handwriting in the annotations, my way of drawing sections, the notation systems I had developed over years of practice. Emilio drew differently, with a thicker line and fewer written notes, and that difference was visible and consistent throughout all the physical material. The digital files had authorship metadata. The three-dimensional modeling had been built from my computer with my user. The version history showed who had modified what and when with a precision that admitted no ambiguity. The emails between us during the project's development built a complete narrative of who had proposed each element, who had resolved each technical problem, who had made the design decisions that defined the project. The natural lighting solution, I remembered finding that Tuesday with the cold coffee, was documented in an email I had sent Emilio that same night describing the system, with the scan sketch attached, 3 weeks before it appeared in any digital file of the project. It was my work, and I could prove it with millimeter precision. I called my attorney the following day. Attorney Ines Montoya has spent 10 years specializing in intellectual property and copyright in the field of design and architecture. I met her at a seminar 5 years ago, and since then she has been my reference for any legal matter related to my professional work. I explained the situation. I sent her the documentation that same afternoon. She called me 2 hours later. She told me the case was solid from an intellectual property standpoint, that in architecture the copyright over a design belongs to the author or authors who created it regardless of the personal or professional relationship that exists between them, and that the absence of a formal collaboration agreement between Emilio and me did not give him the right to present the work as exclusively his. She told me we had 2 immediate lines of action. The first was a formal notification to the competition organizers informing them of the authorship dispute over the finalist project, with supporting documentation. Competitions of this nature have protocols for handling authorship disputes, and the notification would activate that protocol before any award was issued. The second was a civil lawsuit for copyright infringement against Emilio, which could be filed in parallel with the competition process. She asked me how I wanted to proceed. I told her I wanted both things simultaneously. The notification to the competition organizers arrived on a Thursday morning, 10 days before the award ceremony. It included an executive summary of the authorship dispute, the documentation of the emails with their dates and contents, images of the original sketches with verifiable dates, and the metadata of the main digital files demonstrating authorship from my computer and user. The organizers responded within 48 hours. The competition's protocol for authorship disputes established that upon a documented claim, the decision on the disputed project would be suspended until the dispute was resolved. Emilio would be notified of the claim and would have a period to present his version and supporting documentation. Emilio was notified that same Friday. He called me Saturday morning. The conversation was different from what I expected. There was no immediate denial. There was no explosion of rage. There was an initial silence, and then a voice I recognized as that of someone who has just understood that the ground they believe solid is not. He told me the project was both of ours, that we had worked together, that there were elements of his in the design too. I told him he was right about that there were elements of his, that precisely for that reason what he had done was present a collaborative work as exclusively his, erasing my authorship deliberately. That if the project was both of ours, the technical sheet should reflect that. That if he wanted to resolve this in a way that reflected reality, there was a way to do it. But that if he wanted to argue about it, we had documentation to argue it in whatever context was necessary. There was a long pause. He asked me what I wanted. I told him exactly what I wanted. What I wanted was simple and specific. I wanted the project's technical sheet in the competition to be corrected to reflect the real authorship, both names, with a precise description of each person's contributions that I had drafted based on the available documentation. I wanted a written and signed acknowledgement of my authorship over the elements of the project that were specifically mine, which would remain as a private document between the two of us and our respective attorneys, but that would have legal value in any future use of the project. And I wanted any future professional use of the project in portfolios, publications, or presentations to reflect the shared authorship. I did not ask for money. I did not ask for him to withdraw from the competition. I did not ask for any public consequence that would destroy him professionally, even though I would have had legal grounds to pursue several. What I asked for was the truth in the documents where it belonged. Emilio agreed. Not gracefully, not with the genuine acknowledgement that in some ideal world would have been the right response. He agreed with the pragmatic resignation of someone who has evaluated his options and concluded that what is being asked of him is better than the alternatives. The project's technical sheet was corrected. Valentina Restrepo and Emilio Vargas, it now said. Both names. The award ceremony was 2 weeks later. We did not win first prize. We placed second, which in that competition carried a recognition of $100,000 that was divided equally as agreed. It was not the $500,000 that first prize would have been, but it was real. It was fair. It was with my name in the place where it always should have been. What I remember most from that night is not the moment they announced second place. It is the moment before, when we were waiting for the results, and I was sitting in that room with my name on the project's technical sheet, looking at the images of that building projected on a large screen, and thinking about the Tuesday with the cold coffee and the sketch notebook and the solution I found and documented and saved, because saving things is a habit, and habits are sometimes what saves you. That habit saved me. Not the confrontation, not the drama, not the emotions that came afterward. The simple, everyday habit of filing, of dating, of keeping the originals, of building a record of your own work, because your work is yours and deserves to be protected with the same seriousness with which you create it. That is what I want you to take away. Your work leaves traces. Take care of those traces. They're the ones that speak when words are not enough. If this story lit something inside you, comment. Would you keep the originals of your creative work or trust your memory? Like if you believe your creative work deserves legal protection. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is creative or a designer and needs to know their work has legal protection. Practical tip: if you're a designer, architect, writer, photographer, or any kind of creative, document your process from start. Keep original sketches with dates. Preserve the metadata of your digital files. Email yourself progress on your work to create verifiable dated records. Your creative process is evidence of authorship. Treat it as such.